It, fake hate crimes, and why people can't seem to stop faking them. I'm Joel Kurtnitis, and you're listening to Constructive Interference. Well, welcome back to another episode. Josh Hugo is not with me tonight, so I am flying solo, which means you guys are in for a wild ride, because the common sense has left the building, so to speak. If any of you guys got any siblings, I have two brothers. We picked on each other a lot because that's kind of what brothers do, right? That's what they're here for, I'm pretty sure. And one of the tactics, back in the day, I don't know if kids still do it these days, but you grab somebody's arms when you're fussing with them and tangling with them and fighting with them and wrestling and roughhousing. You're going to grab their arms and you start smacking them in the face with their own arms and you say, quit hitting yourself, right? I know this is what passed for fun back in the 90s, right? So the problem is, societally today, we have officially reached the quit hitting yourself portion of American history. What do I mean by that? Well, we have a problem with people faking hate crimes. Now, that is not to say, I hate giving disclaimers about everything. I feel like, maybe it's due in part to social media, I don't know, but I feel like everything nowadays needs a disclaimer in front of it. And it makes things really difficult, actually, when I'm writing articles or even doing this podcast, because I feel like you can't make a general statement that should be commonsensical without throwing a dozen asterisks after it. It just seems like you have to pile on well, I don't mean this, and I don't mean that, and I hope this doesn't offend anybody, But the disclaimer that I have to throw on this is that there really are crimes that people commit out of hatred. What I don't want to use is the term hate crime, because I feel like a crime is a crime. Your motivation is sort of irrelevant once that point is there, right? Like if you beat somebody up in the street, it doesn't really matter whether you're doing it because of their skin color or their hair color. And that's why I have such a problem with so-called hate crimes legislation. However, people do still commit crimes for really stupid reasons. And some of those reasons happen to be racial hatred or animosity or, class division. All the classic conflict between groups is represented in some of these crimes. And so people have used the term generally hate crime to address them. The problem is we now have a problem with people faking hate crimes. It's still a little bit surreal to me. I can't believe that we've actually gotten to the point where people are there's a spate of people all across America. It's not isolated to one group of people or one locale at all. I mean, this is an overarching problem that we have. The people are now faking hate crimes. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And if Josh were here, I'm guessing it wouldn't make a lot of sense to him either. But the big one that's on everybody's minds today is Jussie Smollett. Jussie Smollett is an actor on the popular television show Empire. I know this because I had to look him up. Honest to God, I didn't know the guy's name before this controversy that he was in. But he was involved in a controversy in which he claimed that folks came up to him saying MAGA country, white folks came up to him saying MAGA country, and proceeded to beat him up and put a noose around his neck and use a bunch of racist and homophobic slurs. This was the story that he gave police. He was admitted to a hospital. And now his story is unraveling. It's beginning to look like, according to police, the evidence is pointing in the direction of Mr. Smollett basically staging the whole thing himself. That these were friends of his that he paid off to commit this act and then build a story off of it. Which raises all kinds of questions about his mental state. But it also raises some questions about the state of America, right? I mean, what does it say about us that somebody thinks it's a good idea that a famous person, now this is not just a a nobody from down the street. This is a famous person who's wealthy and well off, and presumably wealthy and well off. At least he's very well known. He's enjoyed success in a Hollywood capacity anyway. And what does it say about us that he finds the need to go out and fake a hate crime? I mean, and now there could well be, it could well be that, everything we know about the case so far ends up being wrong, and it ends up that there was a real crime committed, something along those lines. But at this point, it really looks like the guy just faked it. And if that was an isolated incident, I would say, okay, well, maybe he's an egomaniac and he just needs his name in the press, which is, let's face it, that's not a very rare thing in Hollywood, right? So you could blow it off to that, except that he's not alone, not by a long shot. Fake hate crimes have been popping up all over the place. It seems like there's been an acceleration of them in the past 2 years. And this raises a whole lot of concerns about, people crying wolf, about the fact that crimes like this will not be taken seriously because people are faking it. But I mean, if you look at, there's a website dedicated to this. I did not know this. I was on social media talking to folks about this, and I said, boy, it'd be great, because I've seen so many of these stories pop up about fake hate crimes. It would be great if somebody had the time to just go compile these all in one convenient website. Ta-da! Turns out they did. It's called fakehatecrimes.org. If you have a chance, I would definitely recommend you get out and take a look at that, okay? Listen, like I said, these crimes do happen, but if this list is any indicator, there's a ton of people that are out there faking them as well. And that raises a lot of important questions I want to answer in a minute. But some of these are crazy. Racist graffiti was painted on a car near Kansas State University. Turned out to be a hoax, and it was written by the car's owner. I mean, there's just a ton of stories on here. You could just look down the list. A black male vandalized 5 black churches. That's on video. I mean, there's all kinds of evidence that people are faking these crimes all over the place. And what's really shameful about it is that a lot of people are quick to jump on the bandwagon when the initial reports come out. Saying, hey, a bunch of white guys jumped me in the street and called me names and said this was MAGA country. And there's almost always a Trump tie-in, right? Like they were wearing MAGA hats, they're evil or whatever. There's always some sort of a Trump tie-in. But the tendency whenever this happens is that a bunch of, first of all, it gets crazy media coverage. And then the blue check marks on Twitter, all the Hollywooders and the academics and the elite and the political activists, they all sort of dogpile on it, right? Before anybody knows what happened in any way, they just go out there and they jump all over it. Look, this is not too much of a novel take. I know that if you're listening to conservative commentary at all right now, you're going to hear the same thing that I'm saying right now. People are condemning the elites and talking about, okay, they see how embarrassing it is for all these Democratic presidential candidates who come out, and justice for Jussie Smollett, and all of these things. And yeah, that's pretty standard fare. But I think there's a deeper issue here, and that's what I want to dive into a little bit today. And this one's not unique either, right? People are thinking about all sorts of things in relation to this issue. But I think it's just the shock factor that many of us have that we've reached the point in America now where if you don't have enough violence to justify your narrative, you just go on out and create some yourself. Because that's really what it's starting to look like. And I hope that that's not the case. I hope that there are enough reasonable folks on the left who see this kind of thing that they can come out and condemn it and say, you know what, this cannot be tolerated because of what it's going to do to people who are real victims, to people who really struggle against this kind of thing. What's it going to do to them when people become, biased against their accounts and against what they have to say, just because so many people have been out there just posing? I mean, that's just common sense, right? So the problem that we have is that we're looking for answers on this. It's not just that it's happened. Ha ha ha! Dumb liberals are out there faking things. It's not just that it's happening. Here at Constructive Interference, we like to get into the why. We like to find out what's tying things together. What's causing this? So sure, on one level, you've got the publicity angle, right? Somebody who maybe not exactly an A-lister, not exactly a top tier Hollywood talent that's looking to break into the next tier. Well, how do you do it? If you want to be known as bold and you want to become a big name in Hollywood now, what you do is you bash Trump, or you ally yourself with the progressive. Well, I hate to call them progressive. I really don't think they are. The regressive left, the identitarian social justice warrior left. Because there are a lot of, I like to make that distinction because there are folks who are liberal, who I believe are reasonable people, who I can have a conversation with, who we can agree on some things about, who we can find avenues of commonality. And then there are folks who are the sort of new wave, and I think a very tiny wave, the intersectionalists, the SJWs, the crazy radical feminists, the Black Power folks. I mean, the identity politics exclusively groups. And we've talked about this on the program before. These groups exist on the right too, okay? But at the moment, this particular spate of fake hate crimes seems to be pretty much all in one corner. The number of, and I, you know, if you look down the list here, you'd be hard pressed to find, you know, people on the right faking this kind of thing. It's people on the right have their own issues, but this isn't one of them. We usually we're usually a little bit more aggressive about the way that we portray things, about the way that we try to get our point across. So, but in this case, I mean, you've got the question of, okay, was it about publicity in Jussie Smollett's case? Potentially, you know, maybe he just wanted his name in the news. Maybe he wanted folks like myself, who are probably never going to watch his TV show, who are probably, well, I don't really watch anything on mainstream TV, to know who he is. So that's one potential payoff, right? Because he got all the free publicity. His name's in the papers. He's a big name now. Hollywood celebrities went on the air all over the place to defend him and help him and, you know, back him up in his hour of need and all of these things. And you should hear, I mean, Steven Crowder did a great piece on this earlier today. You should hear the, just the hand wringing from these, you know, wealthy, well-off elitists about Trump's America and how evil it is and how the oppressed minorities are just being beaten in the streets now. And like, it just crazy, crazy stuff. And he played right into this. I mean, the guy himself played right into this, you know, telling everybody don't worry, I'm all right. You know, I'm still here and I'm hanging in there. You know, you set the thing up yourself, dude. Like, but he really somehow, in his mind, he thought this was a good idea. The second level. So if it's not about publicity, the second level would be it's about a narrative, right? That's kind of the second level of analysis on this. Is okay. Well, and this is the one that, you know, most people on the right frequently and quickly reach this conclusion that, okay, well, it's about their narrative. There's not enough legitimate hate crimes by white supremacists, and it doesn't fit their narrative because they're all out there saying that Trump is the most racist president in history and the GOP's wholesale racist, sexist, bigoted, you know, all of these things. And if that's what you're running on, if that's literally your platform, but you have one little problem. The facts just aren't there to back it up, right? The numbers aren't there. People are not beating other people up in the streets. The MAGA hat crowds, the Covington kids are not grabbing Native American folks and throwing them in the pond. I mean, there's these things that you really want to be true are not true. And so there's a desire there to justify your narrative and by extension your behavior by making these things up. So that's sort of the second level, right? Is people, okay, they look at this and they want to see something, they want to see evidence of what they really honestly and sincerely believed, but that evidence is not there. So they make the evidence. And then that helps, you know, that helps everyone around them sort of buy into the hysteria even more. I think this is especially true in college campuses. If you see a lot of these fake hate crimes that are listed here, including several of them here in my home state of Iowa, Drake University, were perpetrated by leftist college kids, who should be, you know, by rights, they should be looking for evidence and then basing their decisions and their opinions on it. But I guess a few of them at least sort of went, well, to heck with it. We'll just write some racist graffiti on things and say there's a white supremacy problem because Trump is president. So, but that's valid, right? If you want to talk about that I think is a valid second stage of analysis on the whole spate of fake hate crimes issue. But I think there's one that goes even further than that. And I'm going to, I could dive into it myself, but the idea is not original with me. I was listening to a fellow by the name of Tim Pool. He's a YouTuber who I think is fantastic. I would definitely recommend you follow him. And he was talking about sort of the aftermath of the Smollett affair and why it's so devastating the way that it's panned out and the publicity that has come from it. Give him a listen real quick.
Now, the question arises, why would people do this? And I think the answer is really simple. As I pointed out earlier in this video, victimhood culture. When people make these claims, when these stories comes out, it empowers a tribal faction of a certain regressive left. We can just look to the video of Ellen Page on The Late Show talking about Jussie Smollett. This video on Twitter has 16.5 million views. It has 86,713 retweets, 243,000 likes. In this video, Ellen Page condemns the attack on Jussie Smollett, blames the administration. The crowd falls silent, and then everyone claps and cheers. And you know what? Ellen Page didn't lie, but she certainly used this hoax to empower her tribal faction, to empower her politics. And this spoke to a lot of people. The video on YouTube has 1,428,725 views. There is power in the narrative of being a victim because people believe in justice, because people want to help those who have been wronged. And these people who are perpetrating these hoaxes are exploiting our goodwill.
Okay, did you catch the last part of that? They're exploiting our goodwill. Now, Tim goes on to develop this a little bit, but I think he's absolutely right. People have, well, I'll just put it this way. One of the best things, the most fundamentally good impulses that people have is to relieve the oppressed. I think that this is something that is one of those better angels of our nature things, right? It's been developed and cultivated in Western culture for a long time, that when you see someone being oppressed, you want to do something about it. If someone's legitimately in trouble, you want to help them. If there's somebody who cannot defend themselves, you want to defend them. This is a fundamentally American value, right? And a fundamentally Christian value. And a lot of the world can agree on this. But when you take that ethic and you find a way to exploit it, it breaks something. It breaks something in your ethics. It breaks something across the board because now you have invented a way to gain from this sort of heroic impulse that people have. So what do? You create victims. And that's how that victimhood is currency. You create victims, and then those victims get hoisted onto the shoulders of the people who want to deliver them. And that's kind of the exchange. And when you look at it from that sense, it really works. It fits. What you see going on right now, we have to a large degree, we have allowed that deliver the oppressed minority thing to become a paradigm that excludes everything else, to the point where we demonize strength, we demonize success, we demonize power completely. And we elevate people who are victims just because they are victims, not because we want to see, fairness restored or decency or any of those things. It's because they're victims. And being a victim is not in itself virtuous. I think, being a savior is virtuous. There's good in that, but being a victim is not virtuous. It doesn't make you good. You'd be a victim for a whole lot of reasons, many of them your own doing. So when you look at this, you would hope that justice comes around, right? You would hope that there would be some sort of a backlash to this, because it's really, really embarrassing to go out, pay somebody to fake a hate crime on you, get your rear beat up, go to a hospital, and then go back to Hollywood and receive all sorts of accolades and praise for it, right? I mean, in prior generations, people would have had a lot more to say about that negative. Today, there's very little repercussion right now for Jussie Smollett. Some of the folks on this list at fakehatecrimes.org, again, I really recommend you go visit that site, but some of these folks that have perpetrated these things have actually gotten criminally charged over it, okay? But many of them have not. There's not really any consequence in a lot of places for these kinds of false accusations or whatever. And in some cases, even when there are consequences, they're pretty minimal. Like the guy, you'll get if you vandalize people's possessions with swastikas and all these things trying to make your point. Well, you'll probably get you'll get accused of vandalism and you'll pay the penalty for that, but not for hate crimes. So anybody doing a cost benefit analysis on this would understand that, okay, well, there's such a sensitivity around hate crimes right now that we could excuse some smaller offenses in showing them because it might be to our benefit politically or socially to do so. Now, There's also suspicion, and I think a high degree of apprehension among most of, I would say, common sense America, that not only will folks like Jussie Smollett not really pay any penalty for this, but they actually might see a benefit from it. And I mean, even after people know it's a hoax. My friend Justin Brady at iHeartMedia wrote a very thought-provoking piece, short but very clever, about Jussie Smollett being the left's new hero. Here's some of what he said on it. Quote, "Some have said Smollett's stunt is career-ending. They're wrong. Even though the act of him getting beaten by a MAGA hat-wearing homophobic white guys was wrong, the leftist media and their political leaders firmly believe the overall narrative was absolutely correct, and that's key. Leftist extremists truly believe that MAGA hat-wearing white people are evil, racist, homophobic, and generally evil. I've personally spoken to individuals who communicated simply wearing a MAGA hat should constitute hate speech, and anyone who voted for Donald Trump is a racist." He goes on to say that Smollett needs to only really do one thing. In the heavily politicized Trumpian era, Smollett is one chess move away from unleashing the full support of leftists. Leftists that will stop at nothing to guarantee the homophobic, racist MAGA narrative sticks. I'm betting this strategic move will come in the form of a statement made on camera with a tear in his eye and a quiver in his lip. To save us all time, I've pre-written it for him and the PR firm he will hire. This is the part I love this part, okay? So here are the suggested talking points from Justin Brady to Jussie Smollett, which I think is just fantastic. This is him for Jussie. These are the talking points. "Friends, about a week ago, I made a claim that was absolutely false. I greatly apologize for the pain I've caused to my fans and to my friends. It was wrong. Sadly, like you, I have grown frustrated with the increase in hate crimes against gay people and people of color, and in my frustration, I went too far to expose the evil I see every day. This needs to be exposed for the hate it is. While I truly regret my actions, I don't regret the spotlight this puts on evil and racist remarks said by the leaders running our country and the people that use their racially charged words to commit true acts of evil. I hope we can learn together, heal, and in the future, live in a country where racism and homophobia aren't rampant in our communities." And that's the close of the notes that he has. But he finishes out by saying, "When Smollett finally makes a statement to this effect, not only will all be forgiven, he will be thrust to greater fame than he could imagine. His stunt will pay off." What do you think? Do you think there's a chance that actually happens? Because I think so. I think we've created a culture that does that. And lest anybody think that is a phenomenon that's exclusive to the left side of things, it's really not. This is why you've seen Alex Jones and his ridiculousness rise to new heights of publicity and new heights of success in the last few years. This is why basically the tenet of political communications and political shows now is if you scream louder and say more ridiculous things, you will get more traffic. It's just that simple. People do the math on it. I mean, Sean Hannity doesn't have to be the way that Sean Hannity is just because he feels like it. And that's what gets the ratings, right? This is what we ask for. And we've talked about this many times on Constructive Interference, that tendency to just go over the top. And at some point, you're going to end up in a game of brinksmanship that nobody wins, right? And I think that's where this is just sort of the natural next step in this progression, is that we're coming to a point quickly where in order to one up the other side, this is the next logical step. If nobody wants to go out into the street and actually start shooting, which, so far, thank God, only the nutcases on the fringes are saying. But this would be another step in that direction, right? Because if you want to justify actual violence against people, you have to prove it's defensive to win over the argument with the American people. And to prove that you're preparing to use defensive violence, you first have to show aggressive force. And so I think this fake hate crimes phenomenon, I think, could be sending us down a very dangerous path for many reasons. One of them being the political reason that I just mentioned, that it could really start to tear away at that safeguard that we have right now, that barrier that we have between words and actions. Okay, sure, we all get in each other's faces all the time on social media, but it's just words. Sure, we have our talk shows where we tear each other down and then post it to YouTube and talk about so-and-so destroying so-and-so else, which Don't get me wrong; those can be entertaining, but they're still words, right? Somehow, the radicals on either side are going to have to find a way to turn it into more than words. Somehow, to get the sort of radical, stop at nothing, use whatever means necessary to beat the other guy. So at some point, to rally that kind of radicalism, they're going to need to justify more than just words. I think we saw some of that breaking out in the last couple of years with the Berkeley riots and other different clashes between Antifa and some of the MAGA crowd. You could lump Charlottesville in with that. And I think that's one danger. Another danger, clearly, is to individuals who actually face these sort of crimes. Individuals who actually do face racism, who actually do have to fight against people who would hate them or attack them or beat them for the color of their skin, for any other immutable characteristics about them. Because these folks are actual victims of what's going on as well. Their stories are now less credible because of the stunt that Jussie Smollett has pulled. Their stories are less believable. And less people are going to care. Because we have a very short attention span here in the US, so the types of things that keep our attention are usually not the best types of things anyway. But when they do, when there's legitimate cases of injustice or problems, we can actually get something done. Like the internet age has made it very possible for us to rally people, rally support, get money. But then there's these horrible, cynical people who look at that and go, hey, I could rally that support. My name could be on that headline. I could make money off of that. What do I need? Well, I need somebody that's unpopular to come after me. That's what I need. And so if you set these stages, if you set the stage and you set these kinds of fake hate crimes up, you're putting yourself in a good position to benefit from it if you're the faker. But if you're somebody who's really been a victim of crime, if you're somebody who really has people who hate you and want you to suffer, this is not doing you any favors. It's putting you in a really, really bad spot. So how do we come away from this? I mean, it's one thing to analyze the bad, right? And we do that a lot. I mean, look, we're guilty of it here on Constructive Interference as well. We talk about the bad all the time. And we talk about how terrible things are and how ridiculous people are and why don't people address things calmly and reasonably. Ha, 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 ha. People are so dumb. But there has to be a way back from this, right? I mean, it hasn't always been the case that people have made up hate crimes. That's sort of a new thing. So where's this? If we can figure out where this is coming from, how do we put a stop to it? How do we, as a people, move to the place where victimhood is not currency, where you have this sort of agreement that people who are powerful will not abuse their power and people who are victims will not abuse their victimhood? How do you wind up in a place where we can agree as a society that certain things are to be protected because of the seriousness of them? That we, sort of de-escalate to the point where serious things can actually be serious and trivial things can be trivial. Because otherwise you wind up making trivial things very serious and then the serious things don't have anywhere to go. And this is part of that. This whole fake hate crimes affair is part of that. The talk show affair that we just mentioned is also a part of that. We got to find a way to de-escalate things. And I don't think it happens by people just sitting around hugging. I think it happens by open and frank discussions. I think it happens with honesty and humility. And I think it happens by people basing their opinions on the facts and not looking for, or in some cases manufacturing, facts to support their opinions. Look for that evidence and base things on the evidence, which, used to be, that was a scientific, that's the scientific method, right? Like everybody wants to be pro-science now. Well, if you want to be pro-science, formulate a hypothesis, test it, see if the results confirm it. You can do that at any level. You can do that politically. You can do that philosophically. You can do that. You can test your worldview with that. And I think that's one way that we can look at this and say, all right, well, let's take things. Let's take our narratives apart a little bit. Let's hold a little bit of distance with those. Let's take them back to the drawing board and see whether the evidence that's coming out actually bears out what we believe. Is America a racist country? Are we a sexist, homophobic, bigoted country? Or are we the country that has, basically brought freedom to a bunch of oppressed minorities and has produced tremendous wealth and success in places that historically it hasn't otherwise been? Or are we a mix of both? And I think an honest viewpoint, would look at both sides of that and say, okay, well, we're not a perfect country. We got all sorts of horrible stains on our past. We've had the opportunity to do good as well, and we've taken a lot of those opportunities. And it stops us from advancing further, and it stops us from using more of those opportunities in a good way when people fake hate crimes. So I think there's an avenue to move forward here. What do you guys think? I want to find out what you think on social media. We'll be posting on that this week. Make sure to follow us on Facebook.com/DCI Show and on Twitter @DCI Show. You can also find us on Google Play and iTunes. Don't forget about that. I teased at the beginning of the year that we were going to be having guests on for interviews. Stay tuned for that. It's right around the corner, along with another gaming episode for those of you who are in our gaming community who follow us here on Constructive Interference. So thanks for tuning in tonight. Hopefully Josh will be back next week to get on the show with me again. In the meantime, make sure you hit us up on social media so you can join the discussion. Tell us what you think of these fake hate crimes. Do you think they're overblown? Do you think it's blown out of proportion? Do you think it's just a conspiracy by the right to make it seem like Donald Trump isn't whipping up enough hatred in America? Tell us what you think. We will be looking for your opinion and look forward to joining the discussion with you. We will talk to you next week. Thanks for listening here at Constructive Interference.